Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to part 2, or rather, chapters 3 and 4 of our book that we are reading together, Phantom Academy by Shandy Bean. I hope you enjoy as much as I've been enjoying it. Thank you for being ever patient with me. And if you stopped by whilst I've been doing ASMR streams, or if you're new, hi, hello, welcome, and enjoy. Chapter 3, Lessons. I know, I'm sorry, Aunt Val. My phone died. I texted you as soon as it was charged, Christine said, balancing her mobile between her ear and shoulder whilst pulling on jeans. That text could have come from anyone. You could have been kidnapped, and your kidnapper could have been the only one texting me. I've been watching these true crime programs on Netflix, Chrissy. These things really do happen. I'm fine, Auntie. There was just a sudden change of plan. She looked at her violin and put her hand above the strings, not daring to touch it, not wanting to disturb the magic of it and its inexplicable appearance last night. Well, as long as you're all right. Her guardian sighed through the phone. Aren't you disappointed they're making you change your major? They're not making me. I think it's more like a last-ditch effort to help me stay. Besides, being at the academy's my dream, not which major I'm in. Violin is just the only thing I know how to do. Well, at least I thought I did. Take no notice of what that headmaster says. You are a very talented violinist, Christine, just like your dad. I'll come down there and tell them myself if I have to. Christine thought of Aunt Val's arthritic knees and felt a surge of love. I'm sure that won't be necessary, she smiled. I have to go. My singing lesson's about to start. I'll make sure you come home next weekend. I will. Bye, Auntie. She hung up and shot her boss, Ed, a quick text. Hey, just letting you know I'm staying in London this weekend if you need any extra help. Heaven knew she needed the shifts. Her bank balance was on its last legs. Christine gave her hair a painfully quick brush and left her dorm room. Miss Jury had given her a wake-up call in the form of a loud knock 5 minutes ago and slipped a timetable under the door. Apparently, singing lessons started at 6 a.m. on weekends, and Christine thought getting up at 8 was hard. As she made her way downstairs, she was relieved to note a couple of students up. Most likely ones who had avocado smoothies for breakfast and went for morning city runs. It was nice not to be the only one still here. Christine had always left for home each Friday evening and returned early morning, Monday. She'd never seen weekend college life. She paused in front of the theater's double doors, sucked in a breath, and checked her phone. 5:59. Okay, Christine, you'll either get inside the Grapey Theater with the Grapey tutor, or you kiss your next 3 years here goodbye. She pulled the handles, noticing a couple of students look her way. It felt strange to be entering the place they'd been told so many times to stay out of. She closed the door behind her and looked around. The huge velvet curtains of the stage never failed to awe her no matter how many times she saw it. Take your seat, a voice ordered from a place she couldn't pinpoint. Her heart gave an extra loud thud as she walked towards the stage, reminding herself that her father had sent this person to her. aligned events from heaven so that they would meet at the exact time she needed him, or however those things were done. He was her angel of music. She could have perhaps done with an additional angel of bravery. She climbed the stage steps and noticed the single chair in the center waiting for her. "It's good to see you again, Christine. You have made a wise choice," came her hidden mentor's voice. "Thank you, sir. Good morning," she replied, taking a seat. "Should I, warm up my voice, or—" "No, it would be a waste of time. I want you to sing a song of your choosing for me." "Oh, okay, how about Amazing Grace?" "Your choice," he said. Embarrassed, she sang the rendition. A painful silence followed. Maybe it was a good thing she couldn't see his reaction. "I hear your headmaster's concerns," he said eventually. "What made you decide on that song?" "It's a classic, an iconic—" "So you picked it with your mind, not your heart." "I suppose so." "That's the first thing you must come to learn about music, Christine. It can't be thought up. It needs to be felt." "I am very inexperienced when it comes to vocals, sir, but I am willing to do whatever it takes to learn." "I know," he said quietly. His voice started to shift. It sounded like it was moving behind her. "I see that in you. I see a lot in you. The tremendous power, desperate to penetrate your voice, the rawness of dark, trying to claw out." "Dark? Oh, don't be alarmed, my dear. Darkness and creativity are one and the same. Genius of past and present would cease to exist without it. You have much potential, Christine. It is my privilege to be the only one who draws it out." "I appreciate you thinking that. I can't tell you how thankful I am for being here with you for these lessons. Your generosity, it's overwhelming." As I said, his quiet voice had gotten closer. She realized he was directly adjacent to her behind the curtain. "It is my privilege." A small shiver ran through her. She realized how strangely young his voice sounded. It wasn't what she expected from a world-renowned tutor. "May I ask," she uttered, "about Claire Young and Kat Sheen?" "What do you wish to know?" His voice moved further away again. "They have gone on to do amazing things." "Yes," he said simply. "You tutored them?" "The two women are both musically talented individuals, but please, let us continue with your lessons, not the history of others." They went through another attempt at Amazing Grace before he interrupted. "You're still thinking too much," he said, voice rising. "I told you, feel it." She tried again. The pressure caused her to stumble on the lyrics. "Damn it, sorry. I'm messing up the words." "Words mean nothing. Singing a song word for word, note for note, is simply a factual deliverance of information. You might as well be reciting long multiplication. This needs to be your own. Shed your skin and let what's inside take over. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "I do. I just don't know how to express myself that way." She looked out to the rows of empty chairs and shuddered at the thought of repeating yesterday's performance next week. "I mean, I know music is an expression of emotion, happiness and pain, and I'm trying to put that across when I perform." "No, Music is an expression of your happiness, of your pain. Emotions aren't possible to counterfeit. Your audience will know. Christine noticed his voice was rising again, but she couldn't tell if it was in anger or passion. Tell me, what is it that you feel most throughout your day-to-day life? Which emotion? Grief. She surprised herself with how fast she answered and how forward it came out. It was something she rarely spoke of, even when prompted. My father passed away last year. I am sorry to hear that, he said with genuine regret in his voice. She cleared her throat. Thank you. Yes, grief is what I feel strongest. Then it isn't what we're looking for. Sir? The emotions we actively feel are rarely the ones lording our choices. It is the emotion underneath, the one seldom felt except in those few private moments. That is how a person truly feels. That is the one in the driving seat. I'm not sure I know what you mean. Take the little child who likes to hit those smaller than him. He shows anger, when in fact it is in his feelings of weakness and unimportance that controls his actions. Or the aging woman with the diamonds round her neck, putting others down. She's not truly arrogant, but lonely, unloved. What about you? She asked, surprising herself. What's yours? Me? He seemed taken aback. None of my students have asked me before, though I should have known you would be different. He spoke with fondness in his tone as if he knew her. Behind my dark lyrics lies a heart that longs to live in the light. The way he spoke was like no one she'd ever known. Perhaps your grief, Christine, if I may be so bold, is a manifestation of your anger, the anger you feel at your father. My father? Why would I? Channeling all his funds to send you to a school you can't succeed at, trapping you onto an adult path you never picked. No, of course not. I have no anger towards my dad. He did everything for me. Wait, how do you know about his funds? The resentment of having a parent so accomplished, he said, ignoring her, his tone heightening, every day forced to feel inferior in a place he was adored, hearing the whispers through the corridors. Dai's lovely daughter, heir of his name and none of his talent. Stop. She stood, anger in her voice. How do you know my father? He worked for me for many years before his passing. With all due respect, sir, my father worked here for 10 years, and you sound barely older than I am. I am much more than just a singing tutor. I am the director of this academy, and the reason it stands in the Hall of Fame. Even your Montcharmin must answer to me when push comes to shove. Is that so? She said, unable to stop herself. A director who hides behind a curtain and doesn't have the courage to meet with his students? Her heart stopped as a loud click echoed through the theater, and the room was plunged into total darkness. She froze, hearing her heightened breath. Loud, slow footsteps came towards her, closer and closer. You are right. His voice was warmer now. But for you, I will make an exception. His footsteps came to a stop. She sensed him right in front of her, heard him breathe. A shock of cold touched her hand, and she gasped as she realized it was his hand. He grasped hers, and she instinctively returned the gesture, shaking his freezing hand. "Nice to meet you, Christine," he said, his assertive voice now as shaking as his hand. "And you," she forced herself to whisper, longing to close her eyes, though knowing it would make no difference in the heavy dark. He slipped an object into her hand and closed it tight before letting go. A rush of cold brushed past her. The lights flashed on, and then she blinked. He was gone. "That concludes our lesson for today." His voice boomed from somewhere above, near the observation boxes. "I have entrusted you with the key to my theater. You will enter only at the arranged times and lock the door behind you." She looked in her hand and saw the large, old-looking key. "Practice and meet me here again tomorrow." "Wait, how? What?" "Good day, Christine." His voice faded away. Shaking her head, she left the theater, wanting to get away from the unnerving quiet already setting in. Who valued their privacy so much they literally wouldn't show their face? It was crazy. She heaved the heavy door shut behind her and locked up as instructed. "Miss Daae," someone exclaimed brashly behind her. She turned to find the ever-delightful Mr. Persian. "What are you doing here?" "It is of my understanding that your place at the academy has been terminated," he said, sweat forming rapidly on his reddening face. "And you were just in the theater? You know that is strictly off limits." "Of all the staff that had been working this weekend, I assure you, Professor, I am still enrolled here," she said calmly. "I'm now focusing my efforts on vocals. I'll be retaking the performance exam next week." "Vocals?" He went quiet. She wondered, not for the first time, if there had ever been animosity between him and her father, and if that was the reason he seemed to show her so much contempt. "And as far as the theater goes," Christine continued smugly, revealing the cool metal key in her hand, "I had an appointment." His face went ghost white. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but remained silent. "Sorry, sir, will that be all? I need to get on." After a moment, and with a squeak of leather shoes, he stepped back, letting her leave. She gave him a sweet smile before rolling her eyes when safely out of sight. A text pinged her phone. It was Ed asking if she could be at work in an hour. She confirmed, and after returning to the pastel-colored walls of her dorm, began looking up everything she could find on vocal techniques for dummies. She wondered if she could really do this. Her sore throat said otherwise. No, this was her one chance to honor her father's legacy. She was not going to screw it up. Again, she looked at her oak violin and bow under the window and felt the absence of it in her hands. After the quiet of revision and perhaps a little too long searching for and looking through Raoul's Instagram page, she set off to catch the bus to work. After a fairly quick journey, she arrived at V-Light. On entering the door of the quaint restaurant, she was bombarded with the exquisite smells of spice, onions, and fresh dough, and the sounds of clanging dishes and chatter. "Chris," Ed called, serving his customers what looked like vegan katsu curry. "Glad you decided to stay in London for the weekend. It's crazy here. All hands on deck today." "Aye, aye, Captain," she laughed and squeezed between the tables to get to the locker room. She changed into her uniform, and immediately got to collecting meals from the kitchen, checking numbers, serving, and chatting to customers. She loved working here. People were always smiling and friendly, staff and customers. Her shift as always flew by. She finished gathering empty dishes and wiping down tables while Ed locked up. When all was done, she got herself an ice-cold Coke and took a seat, delighted to rest the feet she'd been on all day. Employee mealtime. Ed brought over a hot plate of plant-based sausage and mushroom pizza slices. "Smells incredible, thanks," she said, grabbing a slice and taking a huge bite, realizing how hungry she'd been. "So how are you? Anything new at college?" he asked. She grinned. "Wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Oh, really? Sounds exciting. Nice. How are things going here?" "Well, we've managed to get one of the supermarkets to start selling our products." "Oh, wow, that's finally happening." "That's amazing." "Which supermarket?" "I'm not allowed to say yet, but let's just say every little helps." He grinned. "And every new vegan product on the market is a little help towards a better change." She was glad Ed's business was taking off. If anyone deserved it, it was him. He seemed to care so much about the world. "Oh, damn it," she said, checking the time, mouthful of pizza. "I need to get going, or I'm gonna miss the bus and the dreaded college curfew." "Okay, be safe. See you tomorrow, and don't forget, go vegan." "Huh, keep making pizza like this and I just might," she said with a laugh before rushing her plate to the kitchen, changing, pulling on her thick coat, and stepping out into the darkness. Christine missed the bus by seconds, futilely giving chase on the puddle-filled road before watching it turn out of sight. She caught her breath. There was no way she would have time to wait for the next one. She instead walked against the rain, cutting through side streets and public gardens, hoping to make better time. As she shifted down a back alley, she heard the low hum of the electric station beside her and saw the tiny bright light of a cigarette ahead. As she got nearer, she saw the cigarette's owner leaning in the shadows against a brick wall. He stared at her. "Evening," the tall, scraggly-haired man greeted. "Hello." Christine smiled, walking past him swiftly. "You got the time?" he called after her. She reluctantly pulled the phone out of her back trouser pocket. Aunt Val would be horrified if she could see her now. 10:15, she called back, seeing he'd gotten closer. "Can I borrow your phone?" He discarded his cigarette to the floor. "Need to call my friend." "Sorry, I have to go," Christine said and picked up the pace. "That's a bit rude, isn't it?" She ignored his shout and gratefully exited through the other side of the alley. The soaked girl ran across a quiet road onto an even quieter children's playground. The cold stung her face. "Oi," she heard, and turned to see the tall man was following her. "Come here, gorgeous." Oh, shit. She ran, faster still, as she heard his steps quickening behind. She crossed another road and got herself to a row of closed shops. She sighed in relief at the sight of a bus parked at a station. She was getting on. Who cared where it was going? She sprinted towards it, flashed the driver her student travel card, and took seat in the back row. Relief washed over her as the doors closed and the bus drove off. Her happiness was soon squashed as she heard a hand slapping against the glass of the doors. She watched in horror as the bus slowed down and let her pursuer on. The unsightly man threw some change at the till and grinning with the handful of teeth he had left, made his way over to Christine. He sat 2 rows ahead of her. That was when she saw the knife he held. Without processing the thought, she got up, ran straight past him, and jumped off the bus just before the doors closed. The startled busman yelled something after her. She didn't hear what and didn't care. She just ran in the direction of the academy, praying the creep wouldn't follow. After a 5-minute sprint, she arrived at the city-side bridge and finally saw the school's exaggerated Gothic building in the distance. She almost cried in delight, but someone suddenly grabbed her from behind. She tried to scream, but the man placed a sweaty, yellow-stained hand over her mouth. He held her tighter, pressing his stinking body to her back. Christine tried to wiggle free, but his grip was solid. She closed her eyes tightly, then suddenly felt his hands go weightless. He stepped back from her and let out a gurgle. She turned to him and saw a dagger wedged into the side of his head. His eyes were bulged to capacity. He stumbled to the side and fell over the bridge rail and into the waters below. "My God," she cried, wanting to double over, fall to her knees, but knowing she might not be out of the woods yet. A few minutes later, she burst through the academy entrance, not caring to check what time it was, but insanely grateful. Campus was still open. When she got to her dorm room, she slammed the door closed and locked it, then leaned against it. She tried to control her breathing, taking 3 small ones in through the nose and releasing the long ones out through the mouth. Someone had saved her from that man, but how? Who? Had they meant to? Could they have been aiming for them both in a random attack, or was it a freak accident of some kind? Had she been purposefully rescued? There was one thing she was certain of. There had been no third person on that bridge. She flung herself into the shower, raised the temperature as high as she could stand, and scrubbed violently at her skin. She would not cry for that creep. She'd spent enough tears this last year. The forever absence of her father had warranted them. This did not. Christine got out and wrapped a nightgown around herself, then quickly rechecked her door was locked. She picked up her violin and curled into a ball with it under the covers. "Dad," she whispered, "I need you." She pictured his face as her body surrendered to its tiredness. Violin music began to play so softly that at first she thought it was in her head, until it got louder and filled the room. She was sat up in awe at the invisible sensation. She didn't feel scared. In fact, she felt elated. He was here. Her father was here. There could be no doubt anymore. Could he have been the one who'd saved her? Was that even possible? As she stirred in and out of sleep that night, images invaded her dreams. Images of cigarettes, knives, missing teeth, and angels. Chapter 4. Eric. Christine awoke before her alarm and was compelled to shower again. She wondered if she could have somehow called someone last night. After all, that man could have still been alive, though that seemed unlikely. What would she say anyway? That she'd almost been attacked, but just before it could happen, a knife magically plunged itself into the perpetrator's head. She wouldn't hang around after work today to make sure she got on that bus home. She wouldn't tell anyone about it, especially not Aunt Val, who would most likely send the armed guard to fetch her back to York. The man was dead. Christine was sure of it. She threw on a London Academy hoodie, some yoga pants, wrestled her wet hair with the hairdryer, and used makeup to touch up the parts of her face that nature hadn't bestowed kindly. She shakily managed a third of a cup of coffee and left for her singing lesson, putting the incident out of her mind. The corridors were stone quiet. The air held an unusual tension. "Christine," she heard the moment the theater door was open. "Where have you been?" Her gaze drifted to the clock resting on the golden back wall, its hand pointed accusingly between 12 and 1. "Sorry, sir," she said, as usual, somewhere in the air, only able to guess at where his voice emanated from. "I have waited 3 minutes for your arrival." The echo of the empty theater exaggerated the boom of his voice. She advanced across the grand room towards her usual place on the stage, tiredness tapping her frontal lobe. "I will stay 3 minutes behind, sir, if that suits you." "Your humor is delightful. Your commitment, however, sorely testing. Do you know what it means to commit, Christine? To forsake all else?" "Of course I do." She ascended the few creaking stage steps and sat in her assigned, collapsible black chair. She caught sight of the place where Val had sat watching her perform and felt a slight flutter at the thought of seeing him tomorrow. "And I'm here. Please, can we just start the lesson?" "How many hours of vocal practice did you get through last night?" he continued, his tone mocking. My God, he can be an asshole. "I was at work. I missed my bus. I had to walk." "Ah, yes. Running around nighttime London, very smart." "Sir, I'm really not in the mood. Can we just—" "I assume, of course, in your enthusiastic rush to arrive here, you've had time to look up this morning's headlines." "What do you mean?" "Look," he spat. She sighed, took out her phone, and loaded up her local news engine. Her mouth dropped open in horror at the first headline. "Serial offender found dead in Cityside River." "Do you see what you're running around with?" he seethed. Her tutor couldn't possibly know about her run-in with the man. How could he? She told no one. Her lip threatened a wobble. She sucked in a composed breath. "I'm sorry. I didn't practice last night. It won't happen again." There lay silence a moment. "Forgive me," he spoke warmly. "I did not sleep well." There was a hint of venom in his voice. "I only have your best interest at heart. I care about you, Christine." It sounded strange, coming from a voice she'd only heard twice previously, but it touched her all the same. "I keep myself safe," she said, putting her ankles behind the chair legs. "That is not always our choice to make. I have taken the liberty of terminating your employment." She turned around and looked at the curtain. "Wait, what?" "It is affecting your ability to fulfill your potential. Your ex-employer has been informed. You will not be going back." Christine's muscles tensed. "Sir, first of all, you can't do that. Where I choose to work and how I get there is entirely my business. Secondly, I need to work to keep up with school costs. Me waitressing is part of my commitment to the academy. That's all been taken care of. Your dormitory space has been paid up for the remainder of the year, and you have been granted a student bursary, which will be paid in your account each month." She was speechless. At his generosity or his audacity, she wasn't sure. "Now, let us begin our lesson. I've written a new performance set." Christine stood. "I am going to continue working at V-Light," she said boldly. "No," he seethed. "That's not. I can work and study. I can fit it all in, especially with these new singing lessons with you. I need to pay my own way." She heard a disgruntled exhale, saw the curtain move slightly. "Pick up the script to your left." She looked to see a little table with a collection of sheets. She picked them up. It was strange to hold something he'd touched. She'd almost forgotten he was a real person. "What is it?" "The play I've been working on, Don Juan Triumphant. The Academy will be performing it next month. I've given you the leading role. You've got to be kidding. You see why it's imperative you give up your silly food industry job and commit full time to singing to me." He would not let this go. Why did it bother him so much? "We are going around in circles. We will have to agree to disagree, sir." "No," he raged, startling her. "You either do this or the Academy is not the place for you." Her stomach knotted. He was going to kick her out. How could he? He did claim to be the director. "Let go of your pride, Christine. Be the star you are meant to be." Her blood boiled. "I will not be given an ultimatum," she said calmly as she could. "The school is my dream, but if I'm not up to standard, then please tell me now, and I will collect my things. Maybe I am proud, but as long as I'm here, I'm willing to continue working at V-Light. I need to look back on this time of my life and know I earned it. I don't want or need any more handouts. Please, don't take away the little pride I have left." She braced silently for his reaction. "Very well," he said quietly. "But you will have proper transportation arranged." "Okay, fine," she said, not wanting another battle. "And you're more than up to standard." She blushed slightly. "Can I ask, why are you doing all of this for me?" He was quiet a moment. "I swore an oath to your father that I would guide you, be your angel of music," she whispered. "Yes," he whispered back. Her eyes welled. "Please, let me. Can I see you?" "That's not possible," he said quickly. "Could I?" She rested her hand against the soft curtain. "Could I know your name?" She heard his breathing speed up. "You want to know?" he said with a vulnerability that squeezed her. The curtain pressed against her hand. She realized it was his hand matching hers from the other side. She felt the unforgettable cold of it, even with the curtain between them. "My name," he whispered, "is Eric." "Eric," she repeated, and he inhaled sharply. "Hearing you say it," he said, his hand trembling, "it feels glorious. Do people not call you by your name?" "They do not ask, and I do not offer it." "But you told me." "Yes," he whispered before pulling his hand away sharply and clearing his throat. "We must commence with your tuition. Time is of the essence." "What about your family?" she asked, putting her hand back to the side. "They must use your name. I have not been burdened with such efforts," he said casually. "You mean as family?" she said, shocked by the callous remark. "Miss Dye," he said firmly, "it is time to sing." Their lesson lasted almost the entire Sunday. He made her sing until she could barely whisper, let alone ask more personal questions. To Christine's surprise, Miss Sherry had entered on 2 occasions and silently lended her sandwiches and water. Christine's throat could not cope with either. By the time she got back to her dorm, she crashed out on the bed and took the lozenges she had stashed in her side cabinet. Her eyelids were heavy. Before she allowed herself sleep, she picked up her dad's neglected violin and tried to play, missing the sound of it. It was too broken. She sighed and resigned herself to bed. Before she fell asleep, her dad's tune began to play perfectly throughout the room. "You're here," she whispered. Joyous tears soaked her pillow. She drifted to sleep peacefully, oblivious to the dark figure watching her from the corner. That wraps up chapter 4, and soon, very, very soon, my lovelies, we will start on chapter 5 and 6 if you so please. Please let me know what you think of the story so far. If you've been liking it, what other ASMR videos you'd like to see and hear. And I will see you all so soon, my darlings. Take care of yourself, drink lots of water, stay warm or stay cool